Welcome to the deep dive. So, if you're leading a team, maybe running a business, or honestly, just trying to stay sane in this increasingly unpredictable world, you've definitely heard the term resilient leadership.
Hmm.
But here's the thing our source material gets at right away. The most resilient leaders, the ones who stay clear when the pressure is just immense, they aren't always the ones with the highest IQ.
No, or the most aggressive confidence. It's something else.
It is. They have this internal rhythm, a deeply rooted anchor that they didn't just inherit, they actually built it deliberately.
Block by block. It's a developed skill.
And that is the core distinction we are digging into today. Our mission here is to take this resilient leadership action plan from our sources and really unpack it.
Yeah, we want to challenge that old story that resilience is just some vague thing, a fixed personality trait.
Exactly. We're treating it as a practice discipline, a tangible, integrated skill set that you can actually measure, track, and, refine. It's less about who you are and way more about what you consistently do.
And this has become, completely non-optional. The commitment to building that inner stability. Just look at the environment leaders are facing.
It's relentless.
Totally. You've got rapid tech shifts, geopolitical instability at this always-on culture. And if you try to lead without a really robust inner structure, the cost is just staggering.
You burn out.
You hit decision fatigue so fast, emotional depletion sets in, and you end up becoming a purely reactive leader. You're just making impulsive choices driven by stress, not by wisdom.
So this deep dive, it isn't just about surviving the next crisis. It's about setting up sustainable practices that, I guess, prevent the whole system from crashing in the first place.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The sources give us a roadmap for weaving this durability, which they frame as this powerful mix of faith, emotional intelligence, and strategy right into your daily life.
So where do we start? What's the foundation?
Well, we have to start with the architecture. For decades, leadership was often defined by, outward charisma or just sheer brute force willpower.
Right. Just push through.
We now know those models just collapse under any kind of sustained, complex pressure. For real resilience, you need a framework, and it's anchored by three critical pillars that have to work together.
Okay, let's unpack that first one because it really speaks to the source of that internal anchor you mentioned.
That's pillar one, spiritual depth.
Yeah.
The core insight here is that true leadership resilience, it flows from intimacy with God.
Meaning your strength isn't just self-generated.
Never purely self-generated.
Hmm.
It means you're accessing a stability that's external to your own, fluctuating moods or circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So resilience becomes fundamentally relational. It's rooted in the idea that God is steadfast, which gives you this unchanging context for really chaotic decisions.
I think some listeners might hear spiritual depth and wonder, okay, but how does that translate? How does that help me run a P&L or manage a, hostile merger?
It translates through grounding and perspective. That's how.
Okay.
So when the market shifts unexpectedly, the ungrounded leader, they panic. Their identity and their security are all tied up in that outcome.
Right. It's personal.
It's all personal. But the spiritually resilient leader, because they've built that foundational stability, they can maintain some emotional distance, some perspective. They can analyze the threat rationally, not catastrophically.
And we see that blend of the spiritual and the strategic throughout history, right? It's not about just sitting back and waiting for a miracle.
Not at all. It's preparation rooted in prayer. Think about Nehemiah. Huge task, rebuilding Jerusalem's walls, surrounded by opposition. He didn't just run out with a hammer.
No.
He engaged in deep prayer and really meticulous planning before he did anything. He synthesized that spiritual clarity with strategic execution. Paul is another great example, facing imprisonment, persecution. His strength wasn't from his circumstances.
Right. It came from somewhere else.
It came from prayer and reflection, and that allowed him to strategically guide these huge decentralized networks of early churches. It's always a synthesis, never a competition between the inner life and the practical work.
Okay, that makes the connection really clear. So spiritual depth provides that unshakable ground, but you still have to navigate that ground as a human being under pressure, which I guess leads us to pillar two.
Pillar two is emotional intelligence, or EQ. And the sources are so clear that this is just non-negotiable for modern leadership.
And we know the components: self-awareness, self-regulation.
Empathy, relational skill.
Right.
But the big aha moment for the resilient leader is this. Awareness by itself is not enough. It's purely intellectual, unless it translates directly into measurable, consistent self-regulation.
Because knowing you're stressed is one thing. But actually choosing not to snap at your team member when a deadline is looming, that's totally different. That gap between awareness and regulation is where I think most leaders fail.
Exactly. It's about building the muscle of a measured response.
Yeah.
The wisdom for this is thousands of years old, but it's still perfect for the boardroom. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
From the Book of James.
Yep. Resilient leadership uses that emotional clarity.
Right.
You identify the stress trigger, you recognize the emotional surge, and then you immediately apply that spiritual grounding to choose a wise decision over a reactive one.
So spiritual depth anchors our perspective. Emotional intelligence refines our response in the moment. So what's the bridge? What takes those inner disciplines and turns them into, observable results?
That is pillar 3, strategic action. Resilience isn't passive endurance. It's not just gritting your teeth. It's proactive, intelligent adaptation. A resilient leader doesn't just wait for the storm to pass.
They adjust.
They aggressively adjust their plans and their resources based on the information they have.
Can you give us a really clear example of that, of faith-informed strategic action?
Absolutely. Look at Joseph. When he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, he saw a catastrophic future coming, right? 7 years of abundance, then 7 years of famine. But he didn't just stop at delivering the divine message. He used that insight as an immediate call to action. His strategy wasn't just, let's save some food. It was a massive infrastructural and economic plan to adjust the entire nation's course in real time.
Wow.
That's the ideal blend. Faith informs the insight, EQ manages the pressure of that huge mandate, and then strategic action ensures not just survival, but thriving.
Synergy, faith, emotion, strategy, that's what defines this new approach. But, theory only gets you so far. Insight without a daily structure, it just stays as unactivated potential.
It does. We need a way to take these 3 powerful pillars and actually implement them.
Step by step.
And that's why the source material gives us the Resilient Leadership Roadmap. It's brilliant because it moves you beyond these generalized goals
Yeah.
and creates an interdependent resilience feedback loop.
A feedback loop. I like that.
It's built on 4 interlocking stages, and the loop is designed to be cyclical and self-correcting.
Okay, let's define those 4 stages. What's the first one?
The first is preparation. This is your daily armor. It's about aligning your mind, heart, and spirit before the noise of the day hits.
Before you even open your email.
Way before.
Yeah.
The key practice here is spiritual grounding. Intentionally dedicating time to align your personal compass. This means anchoring decisions in principles like trusting wisdom over your own understanding.
And practically, what does that look like beyond the spiritual part?
It looks like mental priming. You ask yourself targeted questions like, what situation today is likely going to test my patience or my faith or my clarity? Where are the pressure points going to be?
So it's preemptive.
It's totally preemptive. You visualize the potential conflict. You pre-decide your response. So when that stressful email finally lands, you're responding from a place of preparation, not raw reaction.
That flows right from the calm of the morning into the crucible of the workday, which is execution.
Execution is where that structure meets the chaos. This is where you practice focused action on your absolute top priorities. You have to resist the distraction of all those urgent but unimportant tasks.
And it also demands that real-time emotional regulation we talked about.
In real time, yeah. It might mean using a quick breathing exercise or just taking a 60-second reflective pause when a conflict is about to boil over, just to create that tiny bit of space between the stimulus and your response.
I think the hardest part here, for me anyway, would be maintaining that spiritual reliance when you're deep in complex action.
It is the hardest part,
Okay.
which is why execution crucially involves practicing spiritual dependence during the action. It's that instant recognition that your own human capacity is limited.
Right.
The sources anchor this in James 1.5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. This means the leader has a micro-habit of just pausing during a tough problem and seeking clarity outside of their immediate stress. It's an internal check on ego.
Okay, so you've prepared, you've executed, you've regulated your responses, but if you skip the next step, you're doomed to repeat your mistakes.
Absolutely. Pillar 3 is reflection. This is how you convert raw experience into actual wisdom. If you skip reflection, you stay busy, but you never really learn.
So what's the core practice?
The daily debrief. At the end of the day, you journal or you just reflect on 3 things. What went well, what challenged me, and, critically, how did I respond? Emotionally, spiritually, and strategically.
And you're reviewing your performance not to beat yourself up, but to gather data.
Just to gather data. And it requires humility. You have to be able to integrate feedback from a mentor, a peer, your own journal as a learning tool, not as a threat to your ego.
And that reflection then leads right into the final pillar, which is adjustment.
Adjustment is where the rubber meets the road. It's converting the wisdom you just gained into intentional, measurable growth.
So an example would be,
If your reflection shows you consistently lost your temper at 3 p.m. because of low blood sugar, adjustment means you modify your routine. You schedule a protected break and a healthy snack at 2:30. It's simple, but it's strategic. If your morning routine didn't work, you modify it the next day. This is strategic course correction. And those 4 pillars, preparation, execution, reflection, adjustment, they form this powerful, self-sustaining loop that builds real resilience.
that structured roadmap is so vital, but let's talk concrete habits. How do we anchor this whole thing into a real-world daily rhythm, especially for our audience, juggling, 10 complex priorities?
Consistency is the muscle builder. That's the key. Resilience grows not in these dramatic bursts, but in consistent, non-negotiable daily rhythms. We have powerful models for this. Daniel praying 3 times a day, Jesus withdrawing to solitary places. The key for you as a modern leader is structuring time for this stuff, not leaving it to chance.
So how do we translate those ancient rhythms into a modern high-speed schedule?
It starts with morning alignment. Before you look at any screen, any email, the day has to begin with scripture, prayer, reflection on purpose.
And what's the action step?
It's concrete. Write down one spiritual intention and one leadership intention for the day. You're setting your internal agenda before the external world can dictate it to you.
But what about managing the mental noise all day? That morning alignment only lasts so long.
That's where reflection intervals come in. These are short, non-negotiable, 5-minute check-ins, mid-morning and mid-afternoon, where you just step away from the desk.
And what do you do?
You process immediate challenges, you check your emotional thermostat, and you practice gratitude. These little intervals, they break the stress cycle and prevent that emotional buildup.
And we can't just gloss over the most difficult, but maybe the most critical rhythm of all.
The Sabbath rhythm. It's essential. For our audience, this translates to dedicated, weekly cognitive rest. Disconnection. The sources are adamant. Leaders who neglect structured rest, even during a crisis, will burn out and lose perspective.
It's a boundary.
It's a necessary boundary. It's a weekly practice of declaring that the world can, in fact, survive without your labor for 24 hours.
Okay, so beyond those spiritual and time management habits, what are some of the specific emotional and psychological practices that feed our EQ?
I'd say the single most powerful psychological practice is cognitive reframing. When you face a major setback, a lost client, a failed product launch, the natural tendency is catastrophic thinking.
This is the end of the world.
This is the end. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cognitive reframing means you actively replace that negative self-talk with a perspective that's anchored in faith. You stop that internal narrative and instead recall God's faithfulness in past challenges. It shifts the event from a threat into a learning opportunity.
Which allows you to stay in that strategic problem-solving space instead of the emotional panic space.
Precisely. And the other vital practice is boundary setting. This is where you protect your mental and emotional energy by setting clear, non-negotiable limits on your workload, on email responsiveness outside of hours, on exposure to unproductive conflict. You have to treat your time and energy like finite resources.
Guard them ruthlessly. This all sounds incredible, but you said we can treat resilience as a measurable skill set. So we have to track it, right? How do we move this from just a nice intention to concrete, observable progress?
This is so critical. Resilience produces observable outcomes. Measurement ensures your practices are actually leading to growth, not just, busy work. The plan advocates for a robust scorecard approach, tracking progress across all 3 of those core dimensions we discussed.
So we're not just measuring whether the projects got done, we're tracking the integrity of the process and the health of the leader.
Exactly. So dimension 1 is spiritual. You track the consistency of your practices, prayer, scripture, reliance on God. Did I stick to my morning alignment 7 out of 7 days?
Okay.
Dimension 2 is emotional. This is where you track your ability to manage stress, maintain composure, handle conflict. You can use a simple 1 to 5 scale to track your emotional responses to conflict. 1 being impulsive and reactionary, 5 being calm, composed, and constructive.
That's a simple tool, but it forces immediate self-awareness and accountability.
It does. And dimension 3 is strategic. You track the objective outputs that show resilience, achieving key priorities despite pressure, the documented quality of your decision-making, fewer impulsive choices. By tracking these three dimensions over the course of the 30-day resilience growth plan, you internalize these practices and you really strengthen that resilience muscle. It goes way beyond just willpower.
This has been a deeply practical, just phenomenal deep dive into building strength from the inside out. We've defined resilience not as some static trait, but as a long obedience, a sophisticated synergy of faith, EQ, and strategy, all practiced daily through that four-pillar roadmap.
And as we wrap up, it's so vital to just briefly touch on community again. Resilient leaders are never isolated. Mentorship, peer accountability, these are essential anchors.
They offer perspective.
Perspective, correction when you drift, and that crucial encouragement when you feel completely depleted.
Isolation is really the opposite of resilience. The sources remind us of that simple, profound strategic truth. Two are better than one, because if one falls, the other can help him up. Building a resilient community is just as strategic as building a resilient daily routine.
So for you, the listener, let's leave you with a final thought, something to really challenge your current metrics of success. We've talked about measuring the consistency of your practices. But what if you shifted your ultimate definition of what leadership success even is?
If you successfully cultivate this deep, durable resilience we've discussed, if you stick to these rhythms for a year, the metrics of your success, they start to shift away from just output or revenue or performance gains.
Instead, your personal measures of success, they become things like restored energy, actual joy in your work, and genuinely healthy relational dynamics with your family and your team. What would fundamentally change in your daily life, and what priorities would you just drop if that was the primary metric by which you judged your leadership success?
Something powerful to think about as you prepare for your next challenge. Until next time, keep digging deeper.